Yay.
Hello, and again, welcome to Bit Depth. I'm Santiago Ramones. Across from me is...
Hi, I'm Britt Olsen-Ecker.
So, who are you? What do you do?
Who am I? Ooh, very good question. I do a lot of things. That's why I always write that in my bios. I say I do a lot of things. I am a musician. I'm a photographer, director, actor. I do videography, editing, singing. Gosh, I think I've covered most of it. If I'm forgetting a few things, I'll chalk it up to that.
Yeah. And of course, we've had you on here before with Melissa and Outcalls. Yes. And I've also had Melissa on already. So get to know Melissa, and now you get to know Britt.
Love it.
So I guess which of these things do we want to get started with? I guess what was the first of these things that you began doing? The
first one was definitely music. My mother was a jingle singer in New York City in the early days. She sang the Coca-Cola jingle. She did all types of jingles that you probably would recognize. And she would play her demo tape in the car while we were doing trips. And I would listen to that and sing everything back to her. And that's how I started getting interested in music. And she always encouraged me to do all types of lessons, piano, voice, what have you. So she encouraged me to do lessons. She was very supportive, and my father was an artist, so they both really encouraged me to do art, and there was never a second thought of, what we wanted to do or what I wanted to do in terms of that. Yeah, so I started taking piano lessons when I was 10, and then I started doing voice lessons in high school. And once I studied and learned that it was fun and I had a good time and I was talented, I wanted to pursue it in college. And really, when I went to Peabody, the Peabody Conservatory, my goal was to be a better singer. That was what I wanted to learn. I didn't have any lofty ideals of becoming this opera star or whatever star. I knew I could do it if I really worked my ass off. But yeah, I just wanted to learn how to sing better, and I certainly did. And because I had a greater understanding of what I could do in the world, I really got to kind of explore all different types of genres of music once I graduated. Jazz, musical theater. I still did some opera. I directed some opera. So I really feel like music was a great window, or it was a great door into all of the other stuff that I could do.
Yeah.
Arts-wise.
Yeah. So then how did you kind of start bleeding into the other arts, acting, directing,
Right. Well,
video?
I always loved acting, and I acted in high school. And once I got to Peabody, there was less acting, obviously more acting in opera. But opera acting is there's a whole other world of what that requires. It's very different than your typical acting. So I always loved doing that in high school, and I wanted to audition around school. So I did all types of auditions in the Baltimore area. And once I graduated, I kept auditioning. And directing was there was an easy foray into directing. There were plenty of directing jobs, and people want directors who understand the art. They want directors who understand opera and what it requires. So having performed in opera, that was very helpful for me to just have an understanding of what it required. And then photography kind of was random. My father did photography. I loved his film photography, and I wanted to kind of replicate that. So I brought my camera to school. I started taking pictures of my friends, and a business grew out of that. I did less film as time went on and more digital photography, just because of how things have evolved in terms of that, medium. And from there, I just like throwing a bunch of things at the wall and seeing what stuck for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess since there was never really I guess I'm going to start being a creative, at what point did you, solidify it? At what point did it become a career rather than just what you're doing in college or whatever.
Right. I think I realized like I could charge money and good money for photography, especially photography. That was the first sort of wake up call I had. When I started, of course, I was charging just for the film and the development. So I wasn't even charging for the time, because I was like, I don't feel comfortable doing this. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I don't want to be held responsible for messing up somebody's headshots. But then I was like, you know what? I'm good at this. I should be charging for my time. I should be charging, a little bit more than what I'm doing right now to cover costs and editing, which I'll have to learn and have to figure out eventually. So yeah, there was just this moment where the prices kept going up. And then I said, I can't walk down to the CVS. That's time I need to charge for to get I got my film developed at CVS. It was such a different time. Oh my God. Now I send my film to Kansas. That is like a reputable place to get developed. So the prices kept going up. And then I thought I can charge different packages, and I can, if I'm going to do an event as opposed to headshots, if I'm going to shoot a wedding versus a live music event, I need different price points. And that was the first, I remember the first week I earned over $1,000 doing photography. And I was like working crazy hours. Of course, I probably was still charging like $75 a session. Now, I charge a lot more than that. But I remember being booked, really, really booked, and earning that money and thinking, wow, I can definitely keep doing this. And I love doing it. So it was a gift. It's really a privilege and a gift to be able to have that ability to charge money for your services. And people really love that, and they'll tell their friends.
Yeah. How does your music and performance experience relate to how you do photography?
My gosh. Every single time. So there is a quote from Helmut Newton. Helmut Newton, he's a photographer. Yes, Helmut Newton. He says, to be a photographer is to seduce, amuse, and entertain. And I remember finding that at the beginning of all of this and thinking, that's absolutely what I have to do. I have to make these people feel comfortable, even if they're super uncomfortable. And so many people are uncomfortable in front of the camera. I don't blame them. I am the same way. But my job is to make them feel at ease, so the photos look like their best selves. So you put on a show. Even, there have been times where I'm like feeling pretty awful, or like something's going on and I can't really focus, and you have to turn it on for clients. You have to turn it on. You have to do your photos the right way. So for those sessions, it's so much more of a show. You're like, okay, I really have to turn this on, make them laugh if they're not laughing, if they're not feeling it. Because sometimes, when I first got a client and I didn't know them, which is frequently, especially if it was word of mouth and friends are passing along other friends' information. There are people who are very, very trepidatious with the camera. They don't like getting their picture taken, what have you. And it's so much of a show to really ask them about themselves, get them to really open up to you, and really get them to understand that it's a one-on-one thing. We're really working together. We're really trying to create a product together that's going to really look good, and you'll trust that it looks good. So it's taken a long time sometimes in sessions to really get people to relax and open up. And once that happens, the photos are incredible, and they look so much different than the first few where things are a little sketchy or tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having gone to school for music, you kind of were given all of the information, versus whenever you started photography, you kind of learned things along the way. How is the learning process different between going to school and kind of being taught versus learning everything and picking it up yourself along the way?
So many bad photos. So many bad photos. And I will say I've gone back and looked at some of the stuff that I've done, and I say so many bad photos, but really I had already had a lot of practice early when I first got my film camera. I had a lot of practice when I first got that when I was 16, doing some film, and then I put it away for a while, and then I brought it back 4 or 5 years later. But when I first got my digital camera, I was totally intimidated by this thing, and I'm still intimidated by them. There's so many settings and so many cool things that you can do in camera that are, now the weed whacker is going. It's really a day.
It's okay.
There are so many things. Okay, so anyway, digital photography. And this the camera was a gift to me. So I was really, really fortunate to have a gift of this really, really lovely digital camera and the zoom lens that I said, okay, this is what I'm stuck with, and this is what I'm doing right now, and I've got to figure this out. I still did film and used my digital camera because I was like, okay, film is my fail-safe. Like, I know how to do that like the back of my hand. Mm-hmm. But the digital camera, I don't really know what I'm doing. And looking back, especially for some of the live music that I photographed, where the lighting is different. You know, I always would love to shoot. I always like to shoot outside. And the lighting is it's easier. Some people will say, oh, it's super hard, but it's easier for me because natural light's always been very helpful. But when you're dealing with dark rooms and just a little bit of lighting that's coming in, and there's performance and there's movement, there's all these new settings that you have to kind of learn how to do. And the best way to learn is to really fuck up a bunch and think about what you have to do differently and practice. And I would say yes to all of these gigs that people would say, do you shoot this? Do you shoot that? And I said, yeah, I do. Even if I hadn't had any experience, I said yes to everything, because the only way you're going to get that experience is to do it. Even if you're like, I don't know how to do it. Yeah. So saying yes was helpful.
Yeah. This is a question that I'm kind of stealing from a different podcast, but I guess what's the best piece of business advice that someone gave you or that you learned along the way?
Best piece of business advice was to say yes to everything. Yeah. Well, not everything. You know, I say that, but also it's important to be able to know where your limits are in that sort of sense. But to always ask for more. And asking for more can mean asking for more money, asking for more accommodations. Don't be afraid to really value yourself as high as you think you can go. And I remember those first few sessions where I charged a little bit more, or I redid my price list, and I really took those prices up, and I said, I'm going to lose some people. Some people are not going to be able to do these sessions with me anymore. But I was shocked at how many people said, yeah, I can afford this and I can do it and I want to do it. And those were the clients that I was realizing I need to work with those people. So that was a really helpful bit of business advice, actually from my mother, who runs her own business herself, to just say, I'm going to ask for more. Yeah. I'm going to ask for more. And if they say no, I lose it, but somebody's going to say yes.
Yeah. What's like one of the most nitty-gritty, annoying, tiny detail things in photography that you feel like nobody either knows about or talks about, and it's just like one tiny thing that you're just so like happy that you know, or that you're just proud of?
Ooh, what I'm proud of, or like a nitty-gritty thing? That's a very good question. Let me think about this for a second. So I wish somebody would have told me this, or something that I'm proud of is that you don't need to be a gearhead to take good pictures. And I remember having conversations with other photographers about what type of gear we would have, or they would frequently ask me, oh, what do you shoot with, or what sort of lenses are you working with? And I was like, a camera and a lens that I have.
Yeah.
And they would, and I think that there's a misconception that you need to know all of these little details like that. Now, you need to know what works best for you, and that does take trial and error, and that does take certain matching of gear for sure. But I've learned the best way by renting things and seeing what works best for me. And some people are like, oh, there's too much compression, or there's, the zoom is too much. But I was shooting with a really, really cheap digital camera when I first started, and the photos were still used for many people's headshots. They looked beautiful. They looked great. And you don't need to be a gearhead to really take good pictures. Yeah. You just have to have a good eye and a passion for it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's been the strangest situation that you've shot for?
The strangest situation. Ooh, there's so many. I have to really think about this. Strangest situation. I always think of something, and then later on, when we're off the podcast, I think, oh, this was so much stranger. I'm trying to think of. Let me think of a gig that was like, I felt like a real fish out of water. I mean, even it could be even recently. Oh my gosh, this is a great one. I was thinking of a studio space because I've shot at many studios. I've had my own studio. I've rented hourly at studios. So I was in this amazing studio in the middle of Baltimore, the Bromo Seltzer Tower. I had this penthouse studio for a year and a half. And after a while, I was like, the numbers aren't working. I need to find a new space. And there was a local Baltimore studio that was renting out their space hourly. And I was like, this is perfect. The price is right. I don't have to do any long-term lease. I can do really, exactly what I need to do. I can pay a membership and rent. So thankfully, I had a friend of mine coming to do photos. And it was going to be my first photo shoot in the studio. I was so excited. And I walked into the studio. The studio owner let me in, and they were going to sit in the studio and do their editing while I shot. And that's typical. Sometimes, there are many people working in these sorts of studios. And so he let me in, and there was somebody asleep in the studio, just like asleep. They were staying in the studio. These were live workspaces too, and they were asleep in the studio. And I was like, I have to do this session now. Thank God it's a friend of mine, a friend of mine from many years. But I need to know when people are sleeping in the studio the next time I have people coming who are clients who are paying me $400 to $500 for a headshot session.
Right.
And so there was one time when I saw the studio and I was like, I don't know if it's the right fit. And then eventually it became the right fit. And people weren't sleeping in the studio again, which was helpful. But that was a really strange situation because I was like, I've got to put on my performance here and be the photographer that I've advertised and be loud and kind of rambunctious, but there's somebody asleep and I can see them. They're literally right there.
Yeah.
So that was very strange. That was really weird. And then I was like, oh my God, of course I've signed up for this studio membership and people are going to be sleeping in the studio when I need to be shooting in there. Thankfully it didn't, I don't think it happened again. If it did, I blocked it out.
How'd those photos turn out?
Strange. They turned out really good.
Okay, good.
They turned out great. We were both kind of freaked out and, everything kind of looked everything looked great as a result. So I'm very pleased with those results. Yeah. Very funny.
I guess switching gears more to the stage, I guess what's sort of been your experience acting in Baltimore and all that sort of stuff? There's a great acting scene in Baltimore. And once I graduated from school, I was really interested in auditioning for the equity theaters in town. So there are two equity theaters. There's Center Stage, which is the State Theater of Maryland, and there's Everyman Theater, which is another equity theater. And equity auditions are hard because they're really not looking for performers who don't have an actor's equity card for their roles. So they need somebody in the union. Real quick, what does equity mean?
Yes, Actors Equity Union, which is the union of actors that they have. So typically with these union theaters, they have equity auditions, which they, if you're an Actors Equity member, you can audition for those. And then they have like cattle calls. So all the other roles they need to fill, or they just want to see who's around, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, so I say equity. And those are the two equity theaters. But thankfully, there are so many other theaters that were popping up around town by young and hungry people who wanted to start theater companies, myself included. I started a theater company with some friends right after I graduated. And these companies were producing excellent work. They were producing musicals, weird plays. So the acting scene at the time when I started to audition was really excellent. And there were so many places that I wanted to audition for. And I got roles, didn't get roles at some. I did rock operas. I did puppet plays with puppets, musicals. And I met so many great people. And that's the beauty and that's the strength of the Baltimore theater scene, is that you're meeting so many people who later on down the road will get headshots from you or recommend you for other shows or pass your name along to those theaters that are auditioning. But I learned a lot doing acting and auditioning. And auditioning was always something that I really hated.
Yeah.
But you get used to it after a while, especially if you do it and you have your monologues that you do. And if you hear about an audition tomorrow, you can audition and without worrying about it because you've got your book together. You know which monologues to pull. Mm-hmm. So even now, there's still so many great theaters in the Baltimore area. They're doing all types of work. Baltimore is full of theater that challenges you and makes you think and is based in social justice and involves all members of the community. And I'm not doing much acting at this point. I feel like my acting need is very fulfilled doing my band Outcalls. So that's been kind of nice, especially because it's hard to earn a living doing acting in Baltimore City.
Yeah. That's actually one of my questions is how is performing your music with Outcalls different from acting, or is it different at all?
It's different. It's certainly different in the fact that I don't need to learn my lines, so to speak, or there isn't a director who's telling me where to stand. Melissa and we do that for ourselves. We have to learn our lines, right? We have to learn the music and we have to memorize the lyrics. And we do all types of different levels of performance. Do we want to do lights? Do we want to do choreography for this? And it's been interesting because I've been performing with Outcalls since 2016 or 2015. I think our first show was in 2015, technically. And I've acted in a few shows since then, but it's really fulfilled that need to be on stage. There's an audience that's loving it or not loving it, and it still provides something. That's like your Sunday matinee crowd. If they're not loving it, it's totally fine. We do, and it's a 40-minute show, or it's 45 minutes, or it's a 3-hour set, different levels of how long you have to be on stage. And that's been really interesting because before I was doing shows every few months, or I was doing plays or musicals or whatever. I was doing that every few months. Mm-hmm. And now, I mean, of course, with COVID, everything is different. I don't feel the need to go out and audition for plays.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a character type or something that you always want to go for or tend to be cast for?
Yes. Ingenue or I don't know. I mean, I've played all types of characters. I remember one of the first roles I got in Baltimore was this like heroin addict who was a rapper. It was so crazy. It was such a fun show. And it was so different and this was a funny show because it was based around photography. And there was a character that was literally me. It was a photographer. She was shy. She was living with this totally crazy person. She would shoot film. I was like, well, I'm going to be cast as this person. Like, that's what's going to happen. And I was cast as the crazy heroin snorting rapper, white girl rapper. It was hilarious. And that was fun because that was one of the first roles where I was like pretty sure I was going to be cast as this other role. And then they totally changed it. And I remember asking the director, I was like, I thought you made a mistake. I really thought you were meant to cast me as the other thing. And he was like, no, that was absolutely what I wanted you for. So I love being cast as whatever. And I think that's your strength as an actor, is to be put in any sort of role and be able to really, really embrace that role and to take it to the next level. And there are certainly people who are typecast, and I think you see that a lot in film and sometimes on the stage. But that's what I mean. Certain actors that are film actors who play all the different types, that's a masterclass in what you can do as an actor.
Yeah, definitely. And then I guess some of the side stuff like video and film. So like, I guess, do you spend a lot of time doing those other stuff, or do you kind of try and focus on your main things?
I have started doing more video stuff, especially for outcalls. And again, that's the sort of stuff where somebody will ask, oh, do you do video? Yeah, I do video. Okay, now I have to figure this out. But I really love editing. That's something I've always done. I used to do that at school too. I used to take stupid videos of all of my roommates in college and like edit them together. And I remember editing my first video, and I think it took me 3 days to edit something that was like maybe 30 seconds long. I'm sure it's on YouTube still, lurking in the bowels of YouTube. But video is just another fun, experimental photo thing that I've really loved learning about and researching and doing the best practices for that. That sort of thing I could definitely charge money for, but I'm not like, I don't say, oh, I'm a videographer, I charge for my video services. I'm not there yet. I probably could be, but if I shoot headshots for the rest of my life, I will be very happy. Yeah. That's really great. That's really, really what I love. And that's what I've been doing for the most time. Yeah. So, yeah.
Why creative? Why, do something like this? And of course you grew up doing music, but it's like, it is hard to, I guess, see it from another perspective and be like, well, why not just like be an accountant, which is like the default like job thing.
Yeah. I never saw myself as anything else. And even now as an adult, you're still comparing yourself to other people. I grew up, I'm actually in Greenwich, Connecticut. My mom lives here, and I'm speaking to you from the house I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, which is one of the most affluent communities in the country, probably in the world. And I was very fortunate to grow up here, very fortunate to go to a school where the education was, by most people's definitions, like a private school, though it was the public schools here. And my friends who I graduated with, who are in my class, are working for big businesses. They're doing hedge funds. They're in finance. Yada, yada, yada. But every time I talk to them and think, should I go to business school? Like, should I be a lawyer? I'm like, I don't want to go to school for this. I can't imagine going back to school right now. So there's one decision. Okay, I can't imagine that. But it was never my path. I really believe that. It was never the path that I wanted to take. And I do thank my parents very much for telling me you can be whoever you want to be. And I will tell my son and my children that no matter where they go to school or what they study, you can be whoever you want to be eventually. Yeah. Just because you go to school for one thing doesn't mean you can't be another thing eventually down the road. And so many of even my graduating class of Peabody colleagues, they're doing all types of things. Some of them have gone into different lines of work. Some of them are teaching not music at all. And I really admire that. I really think that just goes to show you learn really how to be a person and how to interact with the world in college. And even if you don't go to college and you just work, that's, that's your intended path too. So yeah, creative, it's always been it's always been my dream, and it's a privilege to follow your dream.
Yeah, definitely. I guess kind of a more broad question. Do you separate art from the artist?
That's a great question. I think that I have for certain people, and I haven't for other people. And, I think like when I hear that phrase, do you separate art from the artist? I think of controversial subjects like Michael Jackson or other artists that their personal lives have been a mess, but their art is fantastic and groundbreaking and brilliant. So there are times that I have, but other times where it's really hard to do that. And you're listening to music or you're reading something, and there's a thought in the back of your mind of, well, this person did this. And I remember even trying to watch a Tarantino film where Harvey Weinstein was the executive producer. And I couldn't get through the credits because his name was scrolling through it. And I thought, I can't do this right now. I wasn't in a place to do it. Maybe eventually. But yeah, was there anybody specific who you were thinking of, or even me?
I mean, that is kind of like the general idea of the question, is going into separate kind of areas. And it's usually music, because music is one of the ones that, like, we have a lot of terrible people at times. So
right, certainly, yeah, definitely. And those stories are still getting uncovered. And I remember, like, at the beginning of the Me Too movement, and when all of these things were coming to light, telling myself that I'm going to have to prepare to say goodbye to my heroes, musically, in literature, wherever it might be, and just to have to prepare to say goodbye to those people. And I think that I have for a lot of them. And if Michael Jackson comes up on a playlist, sometimes I'll skip it, sometimes I won't. It just depends on how actively I'm listening. But yeah, there are terrible people that permeate all levels of our world, whether they're in the financial sector, whether they're in the arts. And I truly believe that for some of these, it's just only a matter of time, which is why I have to tell myself, just prepare to say goodbye. Mm-hmm. But when those voids happen, there are other people to take place, and there are other people to listen to, and there are other people to read and watch on TV. Yeah. And it just takes some looking and some real looking into yourself to say, I'm not going to settle for just listening to this. I'm going to see what else is out there.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And besides, there's more to enjoy from other things. Everyone's favorite artist was once a local artist. So
exactly. They had to start somewhere.
Mm-hmm. So I guess last one on this front, what advice do you have for people starting out that want to be a photographer, or be an actor, or be a musician?
What advice do I have? Just meet everybody you can, network with everyone you can, learn from those people. Also know when they're full of shit, which should be an easy thing once you kind of network with them and get to know them. Have mentors in each discipline. If you're doing all types of things, have people you can ask questions of, who you love and trust and you can always go back to. And say yes to the gig. Yeah. And figure it out later. Yeah. Don't worry about it. I really, that's the best piece of advice, is to just say yes to the gig, especially when you're starting out and you don't have that experience, right? People say, for jobs, for example, they're like, you must have 5 years of experience. Apply for that job. A bunch of men are applying for that job. And this sometimes applies a lot to women, because women are like, oh, I'm not qualified. Nah, I shouldn't do this. Apply for that job. And say yes to those gigs, because you'll get the experience. You'll learn from your gig, and I'm sure you'll do a better job than you actually give yourself credit for.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Switching gears, and there's no good way to switch gears. What is the role of spirituality or religion in your life?
This question, I was looking forward to answering this question. So, spirituality and all of that stuff. So I was raised as an atheist. My parents My mother's was raised Jewish, and my father, I believe, was, I don't even know what he was raised as, but I know he went to church, and I know his parents dragged him to church. So when I was born, I was never baptized. I never did a bat mitzvah or anything, but my parents really gave me a choice. It all comes back to choice from my parents. I'm very thankful for them. They said, if you want to go to church, if you want to go to temple, if you want to do a bat mitzvah, if you want to do confirmation, you can do it. Let us know how we can support you in that journey. And there were a few factors that led me to not really opt into that and say no. The first one being that because my parents were atheists themselves, that really influenced me. And so I reflect a lot on the fact that if I was raised in the church, or if I was raised going to shul, would I have believed in this stuff? And that's a question I've really thought about a lot, because I went on birthright to Israel last year and, thought a lot about how I'm culturally Jewish. And I still identify as a Jew culturally, but I don't go to synagogue. I don't do any of that. So they were atheists, and they were never like, this isn't real or that sort of stuff. But they told me what they believed in, and they said I could make my own determinations from there. Also, a determining factor was all of my friends had to go to synagogue, or they had to go to church. And it just didn't seem like a fun place to be for them.
Yeah. And
they had to go because they had to go. And they had to do this because they had to do this. And I was invited to bar mitzvahs, so I got to see what that was all about. I went to church. I sang in some church services, so I saw what that was about. And it wasn't where I wanted to spend my Sunday mornings. I wanted to sleep. And let me tell you, I slept all day. I slept until like 2:00. It was ridiculous. I slept so much. So now things have changed a little bit, because I went to Israel in January of 2019, and I met a bunch of like-minded peers who were feeling like maybe they weren't Jewish enough or didn't feel like they fit into this culture. And Judaism, I have experienced open arms. I have experienced shut doors, but I do identify as culturally Jewish. So I will light the candles for Friday Shabbat, and I will light the candles for Hanukkah, because I feel like that's important to pass down among generations, just what those traditions are. So things have changed a little bit for me, but for the most part, it's still how I feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What is your definition of God?
God. Should I talk about what I picture God like, or how I like?
Whatever that means to you,
God?
yeah.
Okay, whatever it means. Oh boy. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think a lot of people like me have this like old white man with a long beard ingrained in their head of what God looks like, right? But I think since having a son and since giving birth and being pregnant, I think God is a woman, has to be a woman if she exists. And there's, of course, a little bit of, I wonder if there is some greater power, but I really do feel like God doesn't exist. And I remember, actually, I do want to talk about this. So I remember when 9/11 happened, and I remember feeling like if God existed, he would never have let that happen. And he would, and we were being in Greenwich, Connecticut, we're super close to New York City. And I remember going to our local beach, and you could see the Twin Towers from that beach. They were right there. And so many of my friends' parents worked in the city. My parents were going into New York that morning. And I remember thinking to myself that morning, if there was a God wouldn't have let that happen. And that was the kind of the final determination for me on that front, which I still think about every time. I'm like, well, because my husband, he's very spiritual. And he was raised in the church, and he's very spiritual. But that's kind of my thought on what that could be. Mm. There was a lot to unpack in there, and I'm sure I haven't unpacked all of it.
Yeah. Something that I don't get to normally ask, but since you are a mother,
yes,
do you want to raise your son and in a sort of openly religious or non-religious? How would that work for you?
I want it to be open, and my husband and I have talked about this, and he was talking about baptizing the child before he was born. I mean, we were talking about this before he was born, but he was expressing interest in a baptism and blah, blah, blah. And I remember being very against that. Part of the reason was because, okay, if I'm going to be culturally Jewish, that's not how you do it, and, with being a Jew. But also thinking about giving my child a choice like I had, and not imposing any religion on the child before they can make a decision about what they want to do in their life. I think I would like to show him, I say I like to show him the ways of the Jew. I would like to light the candles at Hanukkah and talk about what Hanukkah is. And I'd like to light the candles at Shabbat on Friday nights and talk about what that means and what it means to me, which is we take a break, or what Hanukkah is for Jews and what that story is. And I'd like my husband to do the same and tell stories, because so much of the Bible and so much of that's all stories. And I remember my mother buying me an illustrated Bible because I must have expressed some interest in learning about it, because all of my friends, were doing it. And I was like, okay, I gotta kind of know what this is, and I want to learn the stories. And I remember those stories and being so fascinated by them and being so interested in some of these fantastical ideas and these ideas of magic, and to what I perceived as magic and that sort of thing. So I want to expose my son to what religion is and what it means to me.
Yeah.
And what it means to my husband. And from there, try to give him a choice. And if he wants to be bar mitzvahed, and if he wants to go to church, I want to support him in that journey. And I also want him to understand how I've learned about it and where I'm coming from. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I will continue to think about that.
Yeah,
as time goes on.
Talking so much about choice. What is free will? Do you believe in free will?
Free will. Whoa. Yeah. I mean, I have to think about what free will really means. And freedom. Freedom is freedom free. Free is free will. We're thinking a lot about freedom these days. Wow. Yeah, I think I believe in it. I'm going to really think hard about that after we're done talking. You're springing this on me. Yeah, no, I think I'm going to have to really think about that. I mean, of course, that's such a freedom and free will. And I don't, that's so much a part of the conversation right now with what's happening, and what freedom means for people, and what freedom means for white people as opposed to people of color, and free will, having that option. Mm-hmm. I recognize that as a white woman growing up in Greenwich, Connecticut, free will means something very different to me than it means to so many other people, and even so many other white people. And that sort of awareness is something I really attribute to living in Baltimore City and knowing people in my community and really living with those people and learning about them. So free will can be very constrained by your circumstances. Some people don't have choice.
Yeah.
I believe that some people don't have choice, or they feel like they don't, and they feel confined, or they are confined, or they're confined by poverty, or they're confined by racism, and there's so much to think about there. Do I believe in it? Absolutely. Can it be accessed by all? I'm not sure.
Yeah. No, that's, I'm glad, or I like how you parse that out.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, no, I had to talk through it a little bit.
Yeah. Since you had sort of wanted to talk about this, what happens when you die?
What happens when you die? I know. And it's just great because we talked about faith and we talked about religion and all of that stuff. Yeah. So I wanted to talk about this because I think that we need to talk about death as much as we talk about life. And we don't do that as a society. Death is so taboo. And of course it is, because it's a horrible thing to think about, especially, well, it's a horrible thing to think about because that's what we have been taught.
Exactly.
That is what we have been conditioned to do and to think, right? It's horrible. It's horrible. But death is such a part of life. And I had a real experience with death, not my own death, but my father's death that I've never really publicly talked about. So he died 5 years ago after a long illness, and my mother and sister and I watched him die at the end of his illness, and how that part of his life was so important to closing out of his very long illness and his life, and also how talking about death is important, needs to be more in the medical community. And there's palliative care now. Of course, there's hospice care, which is making people more comfortable at the ends of their lives and talking about that in the conversations with them and with their families. But having that end of life plan and what you want to do and how you want to die with dignity. I think that my sister, my mother, and I, and my husband have all had conversations that are very honest after witnessing that. And we should all have that with our families.
Yeah.
But back to the question of what happens when you die. I really think that's it. And I remember in learning in physics in high school that I might be making up stories, but I remember my teacher saying all of the matter and all of the energy that started at the beginning of Earth is still with us. All of that same, all of that matter and energy. And so, what happens, and we talk about souls, right? What happens to your soul when you die? My father was a prolific painter. He was an artist. He left behind a lot of art, like so much art that they're still in boxes in certain parts of this house. So in terms of his soul, if we're really getting like deep into that, I don't know if his soul has gone into another dimension. I doubt it as an atheist. I don't believe he's in heaven. I don't believe he's in hell. I like to think that his energy is in his paintings, and that sort of good energy is there, and that we get to see that sort of stuff, when we look at his art. But where you go, nowhere. That's it. I do believe that.
Yeah. I think I might make that a permanent question on the podcast, because that's really good.
You should. You should. I think you should. I think that's it really makes you think about your life and where you want to go and how to think about it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
How do you determine what good behavior is?
Good behavior, integrity, honesty, being honest with yourself, even if you're not completely honest with other people. And I'm a Scorpio, so I'm very secretive about everything in my life. But being honest with yourself and making sure you understand your own behavior before you start analyzing other people's behavior. How do you say the question again?
How do you determine what good behavior is?
How do I determine what good behavior is? Yeah, I think when people really open themselves up to you, which can take time, of course, that honesty can really, make a difference. Is somebody living authentically? I think.
Yeah.
Is somebody living? What are their circumstances? What is this person's circumstances, and how is their behavior directly affected by those circumstances? Because what's authentic living? I feel like living authentically is such a calling card for white people in a way. Like, live your best self. It's like some people can't do that. Truly. Good behavior is friendships. Good behavior is knowing which friendships to keep and to not maintain. I've been really reflecting on some old friendships of mine and what those mean to me. And if we're still hanging on just because we were friends once in high school. Of course, with the proliferation of social media, it's like, my gosh, how many Facebook friends do I have that I've never talked to? And are those friends?
Yeah.
Don't know. Yeah. Good behavior. You're going to have to give me this list of questions after we're done so I can think about them.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. What do you think humanity is heading towards in the future?
This is a very deep question, especially for right now, right? What is humanity heading towards? I think we are heading towards a collective inhale and exhale of what really matters to us in this world. We are grappling with a really scary time, both politically, health-wise, mentally, and I hope that what we're seeing now in terms of people talking openly about mental health, people talking openly about death, life, religion, whatever it is, will really open more conversations up and let people be more honest about how they feel and not so scared about how they feel about certain things. But for me, this has really shown me what I care about. I mean, our current times, it's really showing me what I want to focus my energy on.
Yeah.
Part of that is spending every moment with my son, who's 7 months old, and making those moments count. Some of that is focusing on writing, just sitting down at the piano and taking that time and really thinking about how I want to spend my days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And okay, so one more kind of down question before I start going upwards. Do you believe humans are evil by nature?
Ooh, I think humans have evil tendencies, but I don't believe that. I think people are generally good. But I think that they learn evil behaviors.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that people learn, you're not born a racist. You learn that behavior. You're not born with hate in your heart. I don't believe that. Now, on the other hand, there are terrible problems that people have with their brains that lead them down that path, whether or not they learn that or not. But no, I like to think that people are good generally.
Yeah.
Now, I feel like I've got evil behaviors for sure that I've learned and cultivated over time. But that's a true belief of mine. I do think most people are good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now moving upwards, what are you optimistic about for our future or your future?
What are we? Yeah, I'm optimistic that we'll all figure it out. And that's kind of been like the COVID theme. Like, we'll figure this out. We'll figure it out as a society. will figure it out individually. And I've talked about that with my husband. I've talked about that with Melissa. Like, it's okay to have taken time to process trauma of everything being on hold. It's okay to focus right now on taking care of your family and not creating art and not taking this time to learn a new skill. Oh my gosh, if anybody else tells me that, I'll have a nervous breakdown. But I'm optimistic that we're going to figure this out. And I think I'm even more hopeful and optimistic that we're seeing such fervor and vigor from younger generations, younger than me, that are fighting for equality, and they're fighting against racism. And they're not saying, okay, the news cycle has changed. This isn't a big deal anymore. They're still protesting. They're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I feel like with each day, we're going to see more people who are coming into the sphere of whatever, who are going to give people hope. Yeah. And hope is hope. Okay. So back to like death, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know you're like, where's she going with this? God. So my father, we had decided that my father's doctor was going to come tell my father that he didn't have much longer to live on a Friday. And my father then died that following Monday. So he lived for another 3 days. And I believe that hope is what keeps people alive in big ways. My father's hope was that he wanted to do a final painting trip. He wanted to get well enough to do a final painting trip. And once that door was closed, that was it. His body was just like, well, what else is there? Yeah. If that was the hope that I had, right? Your hope is to get better. Your hope is to get better enough to go on a trip. And if that hope is gone, so hope is keeping me alive for sure, for certain things.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
What makes you content?
What makes me content? My son makes me content. Music, creating music and having like those bursts of creativity makes me content. Cooking makes me content. Telling jokes with my husband makes me content. Travel makes me content. Hanging out with family makes me content. Having my best friend as Melissa Wimbish makes me content. There are so many things that make me content. And this has been a really good practice because now I'm thinking about all those wonderful things.
Yeah, good. When will you be satisfied?
Never. I feel like that's such a great question. Satisfaction is so hard. And I'm working on new songs for Outcalls. And every time I listen to the track, there's something else to be changed. And even listening to our previous recordings that have been mixed, mastered, reproduced, that are out there in the ether, there are times that I'm like, this is excellent. And there are other times where I'm like, well, maybe that could have been changed. Did I sing that right? Oh my God, that sort of thing. But yeah, satisfaction, I feel like that's a great question because there are so many things that I am satisfied with. But at the same time, to be completely satisfied is not to live. You have to still yearn for things and make changes to your life and keep that question going of, well, when will I be satisfied? When maybe that never will happen. And that's okay.
Yeah.
I think that's okay. I think that's an okay way to be.
Yeah. 2 more questions for you.
Yay.
What advice do you have for people in general?
What advice do I have for people in general? Take risks. Hold on to your friends and family. Those are the most important things in life. I really believe that. And especially after experiencing my father's untimely death and deaths of friends. It's like life is way too short. And I was the most apprehensive of having a child. And I have not shared it widely. I have not posted about it on social media, which, because we follow each other now on social, like I haven't like shared it at all because I'm so terrified of repercussions in my life. But my God, I am so happy that I had my son, and life is too short to wonder if you should do things sometimes like that, and just do it.
Yeah.
Just take Nike's advice and just do it. So that's some good advice.
Yeah. And lastly, potentially the most important, cake or pie?
Pie, apple pie. Apple pie. Oh my gosh. I had a birthday party when I was younger, and my mother bought me an apple pie and stuck candles in it. That was one of my top birthdays.
Definitely. Yeah. Britt, thank you so much for doing this with me.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I loved the questions, and I can't wait to listen.
Yeah. Where can we find you and all your things?
Oh my gosh. Go to my website, which is BrittOlsen-Ecker.com, and there are links to photography, outcalls, social media handles where I mostly complain about things. Because what's social media for?
Right.
Except not to complain. So you can find all that stuff. And then, of course, band is outcallsband.com, where you can see all that stuff.
Awesome.
So,
yeah. No, it's been a really special conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm Santiago Ramones.
I'm Britt Olsen-Ecker.
You can find everything that I do on my website, santiagoramones.com. I make music. Bloom is available now, streaming everywhere. Put it on in the background, put it on your workout playlist, show it to your friends so you can all enjoy it together. You can also buy the album and get bonus content to get a bit deep into the emotions you can feel with it. I also make music with Power Cycle, an experimental electronic trio. Our first album is completely improvised. It's called Too Many Damn Cables. It's streaming everywhere. More to come from Power Cycle in the future. To support this podcast, leave reviews, comments, tell your friends about it, and buy my music, because by supporting me, you're supporting the podcast. I always end the podcast with my 3 things. They shape my life philosophy. Those 3 things are: love never fails, it's going to be okay, I might be wrong.